In present time, we as Americans live in a society where all people are free to pursue a life of their choosing. We're a melting pot of different cultures and languages. Interracial marriages are legal and common, and they haven't always been. For instance, what if I told you that interracial marriages were made legal in the United States by the Supreme Court in 1967? Also, what if I told you there was a class of people who entered interracial unions for freedom, survival, and the continuation of privileged life? During the late 1700s, Saint-Domingue, a country we now know to be Haiti, there were a class system that consists of Petits Blancs, Grands Blancs, and Gens de Couleur. The Petits Blancs were a lower class of whites that consist of farmers, doctors, and workers. Grands Blancs were upper class. They owned most of the slaves and were bureaucrats. The Gens de Couleur were free people of color, which were of a mixed race. The slave owners had children with their slaves, causing an abundant amount of children, which were outnumbering the Petits Blancs. The Petits Blancs began to grow weary and were scared of losing social status. In 1789, France released the Proclamation of Men, which was a bill that outlined citizens' rights like freedom, the right to vote, and participate in elections. The Gens de Couleur sent representatives to Paris to ask if the Proclamation of Men referred to them. Upon affirmation of this, they brought it back to their government and were denied these rights by their government. This caused a struggle in power on the island. The Gens de Couleur representative that was sent was murdered by the Petits Blancs because they did not want the Gens de Couleur to be equal to them. So this also caused an uprising with the slaves, and there was a war. The French granted citizenship to the Gens de Couleur in order to hope for peace. Many of the Gens de Couleur migrated to America post the French Revolution. They took their slaves with them and migrated to Louisiana, where they brought property. They put up shops, became shop owners, art dealers, and medical professionals. Some of the women from the Gens de Couleur used to a life that was privileged and wealthy, and in order to continue this status, they went into plaçages, which were unions that were with wealthy white gentlemen so they can continue their statuses. During social gatherings called quadroon balls, the single women or their daughters would go to the balls, and they would present themselves to the gentleman in order to obtain a plaçage. Once one of the placés was chosen by a gentleman, then a contract would go into place. The mother of the daughter would negotiate this contract, and the contract would be for freedom, whatever property the placé was to own, money, freedom for their children, and their education. Boys from these unions would be sent to France for education, and the women would either marry other Gens de Couleur or they would enter a plaçage of their own. Women of plaçages were not able to have other partners, but their men from these unions were normally married already and had children with white women. And women of the plissage were known to be concubines. Women from the gens de couler were subject to Teigen law. Teigen law is when a woman would have to tie her hair up because they were of such fair skin, they were often mistaken for white women. During the abolishment of slavery, the gens de couler slowly started to become non-existent because there was no need for a distinction in class since the slaves were now free.